Today, I'm going to talk about the father wound, what it is, and how we develop it. The father wound is actually the pain that's passed down from our fathers through generations. Our fathers get wounding themselves from different aspects of their lives, from their own father to society's conditioning and expectations placed on them, to even messages that they receive in the entertainment and media industry. Our fathers really have such an impact on how we think, how we feel, and really how we show up in the world. It is one of our first and most important relationships, the relationship we have with our fathers. And we now know through research and attachment theory that our own sense of self, or who we believe ourselves to be, how we show up in the world, is developed through the relationships that we have with our earliest parent figures, or our father included. Some of us, and I would actually say a majority of us, are born to fathers that have gone through their own trauma, which just causes them to have their own subconscious beliefs and habits that a lot of us end up inheriting. So now we're going to go through some signs that you might have the father wound. You might develop a father wound if your father met your physical needs, like food and shelter, but they didn't meet your emotional needs. Now, first, I want to acknowledge here that in our society, in many societies, men are conditioned not to express emotions. They're told it's weak, they shove them down, and this makes it difficult for them to connect with their children. So a lot of you out there, maybe you had a father who really just shut you out, giving you the silent treatment. Or maybe he was critical and really hard on you. Or maybe he might have not have been physically present at all, creating a really, really deep abandonment wound. Another sign that you might develop the father wound is if your father invalidated your emotions. Maybe you were told that you were too dramatic, you were too sensitive whenever you expressed your emotions, or you might have even been punished for expressing yourself. If those things happen over time, the more regularly they happen, the more that we learn that it's actually safer to repress or to stuff down our emotions. So whenever your father hears you're suffering and they dismiss it, your reality in those moments is invalidated. So as a result, a lot of us end up becoming an adult who invalidates our own reality, becomes overwhelmed by our own emotional experiences, and who, as a result, doesn't know really how to be there for ourselves emotionally and doesn't know how to be there for others either. Another sign that you might have developed the father wound is if you've had a father who regularly compared or judged bodies, physical bodies. Now, this can, of course, manifest in many different ways. You might have heard your father being critical of your body, or maybe other family members' bodies. Or maybe he just regularly compared how people looked or regularly mentioned their weight. He might have frequently commented on what you ate, how you looked. Any and all of these experiences send us a subconscious message that our worth is defined by our physical appearance. How our body, or anyone's body for that matter, is spoken about by our parent figures really shapes our own connection to our body, and it leads to everything from being shameful about our own bodies to intensely restricting our food intake and many other eating disorders. Another sign that you might develop the father wound is if you've had a father who never showed any affection or any praise. Growing up, all of us humans need physical affection to feel safe, to feel comforted, and over time, this is how we actually learn how to soothe ourselves. At the same time, we also need to hear positive things about ourselves to make sense of who we are in the world around us. So of course, if you grew up with a father who didn't show you any physical affection, any verbal affection, a lot of us end up developing a core belief that we're not good enough, that we're not worthy enough. And typically there's two different paths that we take if this is our belief growing up. The first path is we might work really hard to gain our father's approval, doing everything we can to please him. Ultimately, though, we end up feeling empty because the praise never comes. Another path we can take is we might end up becoming really rebellious and acting out to get any sort of attention at all. This creates a belief that you have to prove yourself at all times. Another sign that you might develop the father wound is if your father was under resourced. Now, of course, this includes all of the fathers out there who just didn't have enough financial resources to support or to be there for their children. You might have grown up in a home where your father struggled financially and couldn't hold down a job. Or maybe he made good money, but he spent that money in destructive ways, like gambling it away. Fathers who are existing in this survival mode because their needs aren't being met and they can't provide like they want to, really are only able to think on a survival basis, meaning a day-to-day basis. And as a result, they're usually not able to emotionally be there for their children because the safety and the security and the pressure of the home is falling directly on them and they're overly stressed. A final sign that you might develop the father wound is if you've had a father who regularly had rage spirals. This emotional overreaction of anger can often spiral into hitting, screaming, slapping things, throwing things, and even physical violence or abuse. Now, of course, this can create a feeling of threat, of danger, and a hypervigilance where we're always scanning. We feel like we're walking on eggshells, always worrying that our father could come home or come into the room because we never knew how he was going to react when he did. Now, as you can imagine, all of these different experiences that we've had in this earliest relationship with our father impacts us, impacts the way we see ourselves, as well as our ability to trust or not to trust other people around us. You're going to want to stay tuned because in my next video, I'm going to dive into how to heal this father wound. And I'd love to hear from you right now in the comments. Do you resonate with any of these ways or experiences in childhood that might have led to your own father wound? Drop it below.